Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings, and today we are talking about book number 5 of the Amelia Peabody Murder Mystery series, and in this edition we are in England for basically the entire duration of the book. Which, is unexpected because most of these books are taking place in Egypt because, they're Egyptologists and stuff. So, Amelia and her husband come back to England, and they bring their son with them, obviously. And when they come back, the first thing that happens in this book, and it is a running theme through the book, I don't think it's particularly, central plot relevant. It's just kind of this ongoing thing happening in the background. But Amelia's brother, one of her 4 brothers, who are all apparently obnoxious, decides that he's going to foist his children off on her. And he tells them that his wife has been ill and has to take a cure in Switzerland and will not be able to take care of the children, and he's going to be off doing whatever, so will they take care of his 2 children, please? He does a whole thing about how his little Percy will be so good for, for young Walter, because young Walter is clearly so, not healthy or whatever. Ramses is, of course, extremely healthy, if, obnoxious. Anyways, so he basically foists his kids off, and Amelia at first thinks that it might be a good idea because Ramses has been isolated from other children his age. He has no peers. And so she thinks at first that it might be worthwhile for him to have some peers, for him to at least try ordinary children's things, because, well, everybody should try stuff like that. But Percy shows up and is kind of a smarmy little bastard. He comes across as excessively polite and excessively nice, and in a way that really genuinely rings false because he's so nice. Because anytime something happens, he will prevaricate and say, "Oh, I don't want to blame Ramses. It wouldn't be his fault, and I don't want to say bad things about my lovely cousin. Oh, we are getting along oh so well, Auntie Amelia, aren't we?" He's trying his butt off to play nice, and it's kind of immediately evident that there is something wrong with this child one way or another. It is, in fact, very immediately evident, if you're reading this, that he's probably screwing things up for Ramses and then pulling the, setting Ramses up to appear to have done something wrong so that Ramses gets in trouble and Percy gets off smelling like roses. It's a fairly standard tale. The younger sister, Violet, seems to sort of have 2 settings: shrieking that things are vile and dead, and eating. Now, I am not one, my waistline would be a testament to this, to complain about characters who like to eat. But since she seems to have no interests beyond shrieking that things are disgusting and dead and eating, she seems to be, a very limited sort of person. So Amelia is stuck dealing with these children and just trying to figure out what to do with them, because of course she would have been a rather unchildlike child herself, maybe not quite in Ramses' inimitable idiom, but nonetheless she would not have stood around doing nothing but eating and shrieking about how things were vile and dead. Anyhow, so you have this ongoing line through the whole book that sort of appears in and out of the story. I could be missing it because, I don't really pay attention to details like this. It doesn't really feel like it contributed to the overall plot as a whole. It just contributed to the overall sense of chaos happening in the background, which, is its own contribution, I suppose. One of the very interesting things in this, though, is that the people that they are employing in town to take care of the house are, in fact, an interesting project, actually. A very socially progressive one, particularly given that this is, basically 1900, give or take. And it's a project that, basically, they have this woman who was having her own troubles finding a position, and she was put in charge of hiring, and basically she hires young women who are in unfortunate circumstances, who, for whatever reason, are basically about to be put into the street, and, that they are maybe from slightly more well-to-do households but never had a chance to, learn how to work, that, because a lot of women tended to wind up in that catch-22 of, I don't have training or a resume to become a maid, so I can't get respectable work, so I have to starve on the streets, or else I can, or else I become a prostitute. That there are a lot of women who got caught in this catch-22 that was basically, you need experience and a character, that is, a reference from another person, to be hired, but but in order to get that, you have to be hired, but you can't be hired unless you have that, and so on and so on. And so it circles, and so it's an unfortunate problem. And so the people that they that are employed in their household have been picked up from that, and so they tended to be fairly faithful employees because this is giving them a chance, but also because their employers are genuinely kind. Now, granted, Emerson never seems to know the names of any of the servants, but that comes across as he's the kind of person who doesn't care about anyone's name if they are not, sort of directly impacting his professional life. That, if you're somebody who is, I don't know, working in a different faculty of the university, no, he will not care about your name. It's not important to him. Whereas in the case, in the case of the servants, they're not directly affecting, anything to do with his actual work. So he never seems to know anybody's name. He's decent and, eminently kind and reasonable about these people, but he doesn't know anybody's name. So there's that. But Gargery, who is their butler in the city, is apparently a former housebreaker or something like that. They've got a lot of these sorts of people working for them, and it's kind of delightful. So that's a good time. And we go through the whole book, of course, trying to solve a series of murders that happen in Egyptian wings and various people associated with Egyptian stuff and antiquities, and the culprit winds up not being any of the people who seemed like the most likely culprits, which, is always a reasonably good thing. And, of course, and you also have the returning character of Kevin O'Connell, who is an Irish newspaperman. He's a journalist, but he's a journalist for the Daily Yell, which, is... I don't know whether that was a real paper or not, but it was yellow journalism. It was not, the Times. And so he writes super sensational articles about, Egyptian curses and stuff. And he is a sort of off and on again sometime friend of the Emersons, because despite the fact that Amelia's husband really, really dislikes the sensationalism and the way Kevin misreports events and all kinds of stuff like that. The fact of the matter is that he's also good in a pinch and is a good friend when needed. So he comes back around in this one with his primary competition, who is a woman journalist, also in yellow journalism. By the end of the book, there's potential for the two of them to have a romantic thing. In any event, he's sort of... at the very least, Amelia believes that what happened there was the crisis sort of forced Kevin into a realization of his feelings for her, because he does respect her in terms of the hard work that she does for her. Well, yes, it's yellow journalism, but he does respect the fact that she puts in the time, she puts in the work, she chases the leads, she does the writing, she does the thing. And it's the same thing that he does, and he really very much respects it. So it's a very, very... It's a delightful, sort of romantic thing. And, oh yes, also Amelia spends some time concerned that Emerson is cheating on her because she runs across a woman who at one point in the past, her husband had an affair with an Egyptian woman, that is, a woman of Egypt, not just a woman who he had met in Egypt, but, ethnically so. And, yeah, there's a whole thing, and that poor woman gets murdered too, and Emerson insists that, that Aisha died protecting Amelia because she respected her. Amelia thinks that that's bunk. But like I said, there's a lot of unreliable narrator that goes on in this. So it's an interesting... It is something of an interesting thing when you look at these books, because it's very, very clear that Amelia Peabody is not a wholly reliable narrator, but exactly where that unreliability lies is not always clear. It can be clear when she says a thing and everyone around her just sort of blinks in puzzlement because what she said seems to not connect with what anyone else thinks is happening. But at the same time, because of the nature of the investigations and the absolutely wild nature of everything that goes on in these books, she's also quite right a lot of the time, and so there's a lot of times when she says crazy things, and she said a crazy thing because crazy things are happening. So, yeah, this is good, and it makes a nice change of pace. It's the same sort of book, it's the same sort of crazy, it's the same sort of overwrought, melodramatic lunacy that the other books are, but it's a new setting, and a sensible setting, a setting that makes sense, one that absolutely follows based on how things work in the world and where they are and who these people are. So, yeah, this is a good time, and I think that's all I have to say, so I will see you all next week.